3 months in the DC universe, and Rimuru Tempest had almost convinced himself they were finding balance. Almost. The warehouse in Gotham's East End had transformed from a safe house to an operational base. Shuna's diplomatic skills had brokered peace between three warring supernatural factions. Benimaru sparred daily with Superboy, the only hero who could withstand hell flare without flinching. Sawai's intelligence network rivaled Oracle's, feeding Batman information the Dark Knight grudgingly admitted was adequate. Diablo had become Gotham's most terrifying urban legend. Criminals whispered about the primordial shadow that made even Scarecrow's fear toxin seem quaint. And Rimuru, he'd learned to live with darkness inside him. The dark multiverse corruption remained contained through constant vigilance, Raphael's analytical oversight, and weekly check-ins with Dr. Fate to ensure the nightmare physics hadn't metastasized. Batman's Tempest protocol sat in the Batcomputer, updated regularly, a sword of Damocles Rimuru had requested and accepted. He was adapting, surviving, even occasionally thriving. Then the sky above Metropolis opened, and adaptation became irrelevant. The boom tube tore reality at 2:47 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Rimuru knew because Cyborg's panicked comm reached him the instant Apokolips technology activated on Earth's soil. Not the usual invasion signature. Something surgical, precise. 12 simultaneous breaches across major population centers. By the time Rimuru boomed tube to Metropolis, his own mastery of the technology now seamless after months of practice, Superman hovered above a crater where the Daily Planet Science Division used to be. The entire floor, 37 people, gone. It happened in seconds. Superman's voice carried the weight of godlike power rendered helpless by perfect timing. I was across the city by the time I got here. His heat vision flared briefly, frustration seeking an outlet. They took Lois's entire research team, Dr. Hamilton, Emil, all of them. Batman's voice crackled through the Justice League comm network, confirming identical extractions in Gotham, Central City, Coast City, and Star City. Targets appear random: scientists, civilians, some low-level magic users. No pattern except. He paused, and Rimuru heard the detective's mind working. Except they're all people connected to Justice League support networks. Hostages. Wonder Woman's assessment cut through speculation. Darkseid is taking hostages. As if summoned by name, the sky darkened. Not with clouds, but with presence. Omega energy saturating Metropolis's atmosphere until reality itself felt oppressed. Every screen in the city, phones, billboards, the Jumbotron at Metro Stadium, flickered and displayed the same image. Darkseid, seated on his throne of cosmic arrogance, Apokolips burning behind him in shades of red and black that hurt to perceive. People of Earth, the voice of tyranny itself rumbled across global communications, hijacking every broadcast simultaneously. Your heroes have grown complacent. Your Justice League believes in justice without consequence, protection without sacrifice, hope without acknowledging despair's inevitability. Superman's fists clenched, Batman's jaw tightened behind his cowl, Wonder Woman's hand moved to her lasso. But Darkseid's Omega-powered gaze looked past them, focusing on something, someone else. Rimuru Tempest, Demon Lord displaced across realities, you who consumed my boom tube technology, you who resisted the dark multiverse, you who claim to protect your people by any means necessary. Darkseid's smile was a wound in reality. I have taken 93 of Earth's brightest minds. They rest in Apokolips's hospitality, experiencing Darkseid's educational techniques and Granny Goodness's maternal affection. Horror rippled through the watching world. Darkseid's torture science was legendary. Granny Goodness's psychological conditioning had broken gods. You have 72 Earth hours, Darkseid continued. Come to Apokolips, enter my throne room, negotiate for their return like the sovereign ruler you claim to be. Or, he gestured, and the screen split to show captives in fire pits, not burning but suspended above flames, experiencing heat that crept toward agony incrementally. Watch them learn that hope dies slowly when I will it. The transmission ended. Global panic erupted immediately. Rimuru stood in Metropolis's crater, feeling every eye turned toward him. Superman, Batman materializing from the shadows, Wonder Woman descending with Amazonian grace. The Flash vibrated to a stop. Green Lantern Hal Jordan is constructing a platform to land on. Cyborg is interfacing with every network to assess damage. The Justice League, Earth's mightiest heroes, all looking at him because Darkseid had made this personal. It's a trap, Batman stated flatly. Obvious, blatant, designed to force emotional response over tactical assessment. Doesn't make the hostages less real, Flash countered, always the heart. 93 people, guys, we can't invade Apokolips, Superman interrupted, and the steel in his voice revealed how much that cost him. New Genesis Treaty forbids offensive action against Darkseid's sovereign territory without cosmic provocation. The last time we violated that treaty, the Source Wall nearly collapsed. Those hostages are provocation, Wonder Woman's warrior instinct blazed. He attacked Earth soil, took our people. That justifies. Nothing that wouldn't start an intergalactic war, Hal Jordan's ring pulsed with frustration. Guardians of Oa are already issuing warnings. Apokolips is sovereign territory. Uninvited invasion violates about 17 cosmic accords. They'd have to intervene against us. Rimuru listened to the heroes argue, feeling the trap's elegant construction. Darkseid hadn't attacked Earth cities or challenged the Justice League directly. He'd taken hostages and issued a personal invitation. Technically legal under cosmic law, strategically perfect, and aimed directly at Rimuru's core philosophy: protect people by any means necessary. He wants you specifically. Batman's detective mind had already dissected the play. The hostages are bait. He's counting on you doing exactly what your nature demands, launching a rescue without regard for legal or strategic consequences. Because that's what I do, Rimuru said quietly. I protect my people. These aren't my people, but they're people I could save. By walking into Darkseid's throne room, Superman's X-ray vision scanned Rimuru, probably checking dark multiverse corruption levels. He'll have every advantage: home territory, Omega energy saturation, the entire military might of Apokolips. This isn't rescue, it's suicide. Or corruption, Wonder Woman added, and her tone held sympathy rather than judgment. Apokolips breaks invaders. Even those who win battles lose themselves to the planet's darkness. Constantine warned us, hell dimensions corrupt those who enter them. Rimuru felt his circle approaching. Benimaru's flames announcing his arrival, Shin's warrior presence, Sawe materializing from shadows, Diablo's primordial aura making even Superman tense slightly, Shuna's gentle but determined footsteps. They'd heard the broadcast, seen the trap, and they were here because where their lord went they followed. Even into literal hell. Master Rimuru, Benimaru spoke first, flames dancing across knuckles. We're not letting you go alone. It's obviously a trap designed to kill or corrupt you, Shin added, which means we spring it together. The strategic complications are considerable, Sawe observed with his usual analytical calm. But since when have we let strategy override necessity? Diablo smiled his ancient, knowing smile. I was spawned in dimensions that make Apokolips look welcoming, Master. A trip to Darkseid's playground sounds nostalgic. Only Shuna remained quiet, her expression troubled. Finally, she spoke. This is exactly what the dark multiverse showed you. A crisis where protecting people requires aggressive action, where the line between rescue and invasion blurs, where justified force becomes the first step toward tyranny. The words hit like physical blows because she was right. Darkseid had engineered the perfect moral trap: refuse to act, and Rimuru betrayed his core principles while 93 innocents suffered. Act, and he became the aggressor, invading sovereign territory, exactly the kind of protection through domination he'd sworn to avoid. There has to be another way, Superman insisted. Diplomatic channels, negotiation through New Genesis. Give us time to. 72 hours, Rimuru interrupted. That's how long those people have before Darkseid's hospitality becomes permanent conditioning. How long before Darkseid's techniques break them? How long before Granny Goodness turns them into loyal servants of Apokolips? You're talking about invasion. Hal Jordan's ring flared WITH Chinese letter. The Guardians will have to intervene. They can't allow unauthorized assault on sovereign worlds. Even to save hostages. Even then, cosmic law exists for a reason. Last time major powers ignored it, the Anti-Monitor nearly destroyed the multiverse. Batman stepped forward and Rimuru recognized the expression, the Dark Knight about to deliver a hard truth. If you invade Apokolips, you'll be alone. Justice League can't officially sanction offensive action. New Genesis can't violate their treaty. The Green Lantern Corps will actively oppose you. And Amanda Waller, he paused significantly, is already mobilizing to weaponize whatever happens. So it's suicide, Flash summarized. Tactically, legally, cosmically, every angle says don't do this. Which is exactly why Darkseid issued the challenge, Wonder Woman observed. He's betting Rimuru's nature overrides strategic wisdom, that protecting people matters more than surviving. Rimuru felt the dark multiverse corruption stir, feeding on the moral complexity. The darkness whispered seductively, "This is why control is necessary. If you ruled Earth, you could prevent hostage situations. If you dominated cosmic politics, treaties wouldn't constrain you. Absolute power prevents these impossible choices." He crushed the thought with practiced discipline. "I need to think," Rimuru said finally. "Consult with people who have dealt with Apokolips before. Understand what I'm walking into." 69 hours now, Cyborg updated grimly. Clocks ticking. As the Justice League dispersed to coordinate what contingencies they could without violating cosmic law, Constantine materialized from nowhere, cigarette already lit. Right then, the Hellblazer exhaled smoke that formed impossible patterns. "Heard you're planning something magnificently stupid. Let's discuss exactly how badly this can go, shall we?" If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. Hope shines brightest in the darkest night. The House of Mysteries War Room, because of course Constantine had a war room for cosmic stupidity, filled rapidly. Zatanna arrived with magical texts on Apokolips's dimensional structure. Dr. Fate manifested, helmet blazing with Lords of Order concern. Phantom Stranger appeared unbidden, silent observer to mortal folly. Even Orion of New Genesis came, though his presence risked his father's wrath. "Apokolips is not a planet," Dr. Fate began without preamble. "It's a concept given form, tyranny made manifest. The fire pits don't just burn, they fuel the reality Darkseid imposes through sheer will. Every invader faces not just military might but existential assault." "Cheery," Benimaru muttered, "so it's literally hell." "Worse," Orion growled, his savage features twisted with barely contained rage, the son who'd escaped Apokolips but never fully left it behind. "Hell has rules. Apokolips has only Darkseid's will. I was raised there, trained there, and every moment the planet tried to remake me into his image." "How'd you resist?" Shin asked directly. "I didn't, not completely." Orion's mother box pinged softly, trying to calm its bearer's fury. "The violence in me, the rage, that's Apokolips. My father, Highfather, gave me purpose, channeled it toward justice, but the darkness remains." Constantine poured drinks, something that smelled like it could strip paint. "Here's the reality, mate. You invade Apokolips, you're fighting on every level: physical, mental, spiritual, conceptual. The planet itself is weaponized against hope. It's why Superman never goes there if he can help it. Too much risk of becoming what he fights. And you, Rimuru asked Constantine directly, you've been to Hell Dimensions. Yeah, and every time I come back a bit more bastard than before, Constantine replied with brutal honesty. The difference is, I was already a bastard. You're carrying dark multiverse corruption that'll feed on Apokolips like gasoline on fire. You might go in as Rimuru Tempest. You'll come out as something else, if you come out at all. The hostages, Shuna started. Our leverage, Phantom Stranger finally spoke, his voice carrying the weight of cosmic observation. Darkseid cares nothing for them. They're tools to force Rimuru's hand. The real objective is threefold: corrupt the demon lord through Apokolips exposure, test his capabilities for future exploitation, or eliminate him as an unpredictable variable. So what do I do? Rimuru demanded. Let 93 people suffer because rescuing them is tactically inadvisable. You do what you've always done, Diablo observed calmly. You adapt impossible situations until they become merely improbable, but this time, you acknowledge the cost beforehand. Zatanna laid out a magical map, Apokolips rendered in 3 dimensions of cosmic horror. The throne room is here at the planet's core. To reach it, you'll pass through the Paradum and breeding pits, the female Fury's garrison, Darkseid's torture chambers where the hostages are likely held, Granny Goodness's orphanage, and the fire pits that power everything. Each area is designed to break invaders psychologically before they reach Darkseid, Orion added. You'll see horrors, suffer losses, question everything. And if you reach the throne room compromised, Darkseid will offer you exactly what the dark multiverse showed: power to prevent all future suffering through absolute control. The trap's full architecture became clear. This wasn't about killing Rimuru, it was about converting him. Batman's provided tactical analysis. Sawe produced a data pad. Potential entry vectors, Paradum deployment patterns, and known female Fury capabilities. He can't officially help, but... The Shadow Operative smiled slightly. Information isn't officially anything. Superman sent this. Shuna held up a small crystalline device. Kryptonian sun energy storage. Won't work for you directly, but he said your analysis ability might find use for it. His way of helping without violating cosmic law. Wonder Woman contributed these. Shin displayed Amazon combat glyphs. Protective wards against mental domination. She said warriors recognize necessary battles even when advisors counsel restraint. The Justice League couldn't officially sanction an invasion, but they were heroes. They'd bend every rule possible to help. The Green Lantern Corps will try to stop you. Hal Jordan's voice came through an unauthorized communication crystal. I'm required to report this, but hypothetically, if someone were to invade during the 30-minute window when OA's observation satellites rotate coverage of Apokolips's sector, well, that would be unfortunate timing. Even cosmic law enforcement was finding loopholes. 70 hours remain, Dr. Fate intoned. If you're doing this, preparation must begin immediately. Magical wards against Omega energy, dimensional anchors to prevent boom tube interception, psychological conditioning against Apokolips's conceptual assault. And contingencies for if you fall, Batman's voice crackled through Cyborg's unauthorized relay. The Tempest protocol remains active. If you become what Darkseid wants, if the corruption wins, I will stop you. We clear on that? Crystal, Rimuru replied. Because that was the price of godlike power, accepting that people you trusted would kill you if necessary. Constantine raised his paint stripper drink. To magnificent stupidity in service of decent causes, may you somehow not die horribly. Inspirational, Benimaru deadpanned, but he raised his own glass. As the War Council planned the impossible, As magical wards were prepared and tactical scenarios analyzed, Rimuru felt the weight of choice settling into his bones. This was it, the moment where protection and aggression blurred completely, where justified rescue required unjustified invasion, where doing the right thing might require becoming the wrong person. The dark multiverse corruption whispered approval. Finally, his nature aligned with necessity. Finally, he'd stop pretending power should be restrained. Rimuru crushed that thought again, and would keep crushing it every moment on Apokolips. Because the difference between rescue and tyranny wasn't the action, it was the willingness to question it. 68 hours until Darkseid's deadline. And Rimuru Tempest was going to war against a god. The boom tube opened 47 hours into Darkseid's deadline, 3 hours ahead of Hal Jordan's hypothetical satellite rotation window, because predictability in warfare was just asking to be ambushed. Rimuru had learned that much from Batman. They emerged not at Apokolips's main gates, where Paradaman armies waited in formation, but through a weakness Saoi had identified in the planet's dimensional infrastructure, a maintenance boom tube routing station on Apokolips's industrial rim, theoretically unmanned except for automated systems. Theoretically. The moment they materialized, Klaxon screamed. Automated defenses activated, Omega energy turrets that could vaporize Kryptonians, swiveling toward them with mechanical precision. And standing in the center of the facility, as if she'd been waiting for hours, Granny Goodness smiled with maternal malevolence. Demon Lord Rimuru Tempest. Her voice was poisoned honey dripping over broken glass. So punctual, Lord Darkseid predicted you'd arrive early, attempt infiltration through auxiliary systems, and bring your dear subordinates. He knows you so well already. Behind her, female furies materialized from shadows, Big Barda's Megarod humming, Lashana's whips crackling, Gilatina's blades reflecting fire pit glow, and a dozen others Rimuru didn't recognize. Not the strike team from Bel Rivet, the full garrison. Raphael, Rimuru commanded his ultimate skill while Gluttony activated instinctively. Analyze the Omega energy saturation. How much is this affecting our abilities? Notice, warning. Apokolips's reality framework is hostile to extraversal entities. Magic efficiency reduced to 73%. Skill activation lag increased by 340%. Dark multiverse corruption is experiencing resonance with planetary darkness. Recommend immediate. The recommendation cut off as Apokolips itself seemed to press down on Rimuru's consciousness. This wasn't just enemy territory. This was a planet literally designed to break hope, where the very atmosphere carried Darkseid's tyrannical will-like radiation. Benimaru moved first, hell flare erupting with temperatures that should have melted the facility's walls. The flames struck Granny Goodness's position and, bent, curved around her like water flowing past stone, redirected into channels that fed the fire pits below. Your fire is impressive, child, Granny observed, utterly unsinged. But Apokolips runs on fire. You're simply fueling our systems. Big Barda's Megarod swung with new god strength that cracked the sound barrier. Shin met it with her Odachi, Hercules' strength clashing against fourth world physics. The shockwave shattered automated systems across the facility and brought the ceiling down on them. Saoi was already moving, shadows carrying him through collapsing infrastructure toward what his intelligence indicated were maintenance tunnels to the facility's core. Lashana's energy whips caught him mid-movement, new god technology somehow tracking stealth abilities that made Batman jealous. Shadow techniques are quaint, Lashana observed, reeling Saoi back like a caught fish. But we hunt beings who move through the source wall itself. Your darkness is pedestrian. Diablo's primordial aura exploded outward, and for the first time since arriving on Apokolips, the Furies hesitated. Because what radiated from the ancient demon wasn't power. It was age. Existence that predated new gods, predated the source wall, predated light knowing darkness as separate concepts. You hunt through the source wall. Diablo's voice carried infinite patience of waiting eons. I am what existed before the wall was necessary. Shall we discuss which is truly pedestrian? The facility's temperature dropped despite fire pits surrounding it. Frost formed on the new god technology. Granny Goodness's smile finally cracked. Primordial, she breathed. Lord Darkseid will be very interested in you. Then everything happened simultaneously. Shuna's barrier magic activated. Ward's Wonder Woman had contributed, suddenly blazing with Amazonian divine authority, creating a momentary sanctuary. Benimaru redirected his flames inward, not attacking but fueling the team. Sao phased through Lashana's whips using shadow techniques enhanced by Diablo's primordial resonance, and Rimuru activated the ability he'd been saving. Gluttony, not to consume the Furies, but to devour the Omega energy itself. The facility's defensive turrets, the fire pit conduits, even the ambient tyrannical pressure that made breathing difficult, Rimuru's unique skill analyzed and absorbed them all, processing fourth world physics through demon lord essence filtered by dark multiverse understanding. It was agony. Omega energy wasn't meant to be consumed by non-new gods. It burned through his slime physiology, rewrote his magical matrices, and worst of all, resonated with the dark multiverse corruption like calling to like. Warning, dark multiverse corruption expanding. Apokolips's conceptual darkness provides fuel. Estimated time until critical contamination, 4 hours, 17 minutes. 4 hours on Apokolips before he started becoming what the Batman who laughs had shown him. Great. But the Omega energy integration worked. Rimuru felt new god physics settling into his skill library, fourth world technology becoming analyzable, even Darkseid's tyrannical will becoming something he could understand and, theoretically, resist. Impossible, Granny Goodness's facade shattered completely. You're consuming Apokolips itself. Adapting to it, Rimuru corrected through gritted teeth. Big difference. Big Barda recovered from Shin's assault, Megarod crackling with renewed intensity. Granny, Lord Darkseid wants him functional, if he's integrating with Apokolips. Then we deliver him to the throne room immediately, Granny decided. Activate the Omega protocols. The floor beneath them simply ceased existing. Not destroyed, erased. They fell through levels of Apokolips's infrastructure, past paradum and breeding chambers where millions of mindless warriors gestated in technological wombs, through fire pit power stations where enslaved beings fueled the planet's industry, deeper into a planet-sized monument to tyranny. They landed in Darkseid's laboratory. The smell hit first, not decay or chemicals but something worse. Despair given olfactory form. The room stretched impossible distances, physics distorted by new god science and sadistic creativity. Containment pods lined every wall and in each one. The hostages. 93 people suspended in Omega energy matrices, experiencing calculated suffering. Not torture for information. Darkseid had no questions. This was art. The systematic destruction of hope is conducted with scientific precision. And orchestrating it all, a figure whose slender frame belied the monstrosity within. Darkseid, Darkseid's chief torturer, regarded them with clinical interest. Marvelous timing, Darkseid's voice was cultured, refined. Utterly devoid of empathy. I've been studying Earth's psychological parameters through these subjects. Their capacity for hope is surprisingly resilient. But you, he focused on Rimuru with disturbing intensity, you carry something far more interesting. Dark multiverse contamination, primordial demon essence, fourth world physics integration. You're a walking experiment in ontological fusion. Release them, Rimuru demanded, Gluttony already analyzing the containment systems. Now. Oh, but that would end the experiment prematurely. Darkseid actually sounded hurt. Lord Darkseid specifically requested I document their degradation process. Each subject's breaking point varies. The scientist there still maintains hope for rescue after 47 hours. The journalist has already begun questioning if anyone cares enough to come. Fascinating variations in psychological resilience. Benimaru's flames erupted with lethal intent. You have 3 seconds before I show you variations in burning alive. Temper, Darkseid tusked. Though I admit, your emotional volatility would make an excellent baseline study. The transformation from loyalty to betrayal, perhaps. I have techniques that could turn you against your master within hours. Try it, Benimaru snarled. Oh, I am, Darkseid smiled. The laboratory is already at work. The walls weren't walls, they were screens. And every screen showed the same thing, Tempest Federation under siege. Not by external enemies, but by internal collapse. Veldura's seal is failing. Milim is going berserk. The nation Rimuru had built was torn apart in his absence. Fabrications, Shuna stated coldly, but her voice wavered. Are they? Darkseid zoomed in on specific scenes. Benimaru's brother Hakyuru defending against Milim's rampage, Shin's guards struggling to maintain order, familiar faces twisted with fear and desperation. Or are these live feeds from your abandoned world? Lord Darkseid has extensive dimensional observation capabilities. Your nation has been without leadership for 3 months. Did you truly believe there would be no consequences? The psychological assault was masterful. Every insecurity, every fear, every doubt weaponized through impossible-to-verify imagery. Master Rimuru, Saoi's voice was tight with controlled emotion. My intelligence network can't verify from here, but the technological signatures match our world's framework. Because I'm using your own memories to construct convincing simulations, Darkseid explained helpfully. The brain is such a willing accomplice to its own deception. You want to believe your world is suffering without you. It validates the arrogance of believing yourselves indispensable. Diablo moved with primordial speed, one moment at Rimuru's side, the next with a hand around Darkseid's throat, shadows coalescing into something that made reality flinch. You talk too much for someone whose continued existence is optional, Diablo observed mildly. Darkseid didn't struggle, didn't even seem concerned. Fascinating, primordial entities usually operate on more cosmic timescales. This immediate violence suggests psychological investment. Tell me, how long have you served the Demon Lord? What loyalty binds you to? Diablo's grip tightened, and Darkseid's words became strangled gasps. But the torturer's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. He'd gotten a reaction, extracted data, won a small victory in the grand experiment. Diablo, stop, Rimuru commanded, and the ancient demon obeyed instantly, though his displeasure radiated like heat. He's baiting us. Every emotional response feeds his analysis. Correct, Darkseid recovered his voice, seemingly unconcerned by near death. You're learning Apokolips's lessons already. Emotion is weakness. Control is strength. Detachment is survival. Why, if you embraced those principles fully, you'd fit right into Lord Darkseid's hierarchy. The dark multiverse corruption stirred, approving. Yes, detachment, control. The very principles Darkseid embodied. The very tyranny Rimuru feared becoming. Raphael, Rimuru commanded, analyze the containment systems, find the weakness. Notice, containment matrices powered by subjects' own hope. The more they believe in rescue, the stronger their prison. Paradoxical design, despair weakens containment but also breaks subjects. Optimal extraction requires giving them genuine hope, Rimuru finished. He stepped forward, addressing the 93 hostages directly. I know you can hear me. I'm Rimuru Tempest. The Justice League sent me to negotiate your release. Technically true. Batman had provided intelligence. Superman had sent tools. Wonder Woman had contributed wards. They'd bent every rule possible without officially sanctioning invasion. Lies, Darkseid interjected. The Justice League would never violate cosmic law. You're here unofficially, unsanctioned, and the moment you leave with these subjects, the Green Lantern Corps will arrest you for illegal planetary invasion. Also technically true, damn it. He's right, Rimuru admitted, because honesty was the only weapon Darkseid couldn't weaponize effectively. I'm here against cosmic law. The League can't officially help, but I'm here anyway because leaving you to suffer was unacceptable. You're getting out of here. That's non-negotiable. In the containment pods, hope flickered. The matrices weakened fractionally. Brilliant strategy, Darkseid applauded. But you've overlooked one variable. Even if you extract them, where do you take them? Back to Earth, where their rescue was illegal. They'll become cosmic refugees, evidence of law-breaking, potentially triggering the very intergalactic war the Justice League feared. You're not rescuing them, you're damning them to political limbo. The hope that had flickered began dying. The matrices strengthened. And Rimuru felt the trap's full architecture snap closed. Darkseid hadn't just taken hostages. He'd created a scenario where a successful rescue carried consequences nearly as bad as failure. Save them illegally and create a cosmic incident. Leave them and betray principles. Every option is contaminated. This was the tyranny the dark multiverse had shown. The moment where protecting people required embracing methods that made you into what you fought. Master Shuna spoke quietly. There might be a third option. She stepped forward, barriers already forming, and addressed the hostages directly. I am Shuna, princess of the Ogre clan, now serving the Tempest Federation as Minister of Foreign Affairs. I am experienced in complex diplomatic situations. What if you weren't rescued to Earth but granted asylum in our nation? Removed from this jurisdiction entirely, placed under a different cosmic authority. Darkseid's expression flickered. He hadn't anticipated that variable. Your nation is unreachable, he countered quickly. Dimensionally isolated, you're as stranded as they'll be. For now, Shuna replied calmly. But we're researching return methods. And offering asylum doesn't violate cosmic law. We're a sovereign nation exercising our right to protect displaced persons. A sovereign nation with no current territory in this dimension, Darkseid argued, but his certainty was cracking. Then we establish one, Rimuru growled. Here, on Apokolips, let Darkseid try to stop us from claiming sovereignty over this laboratory as Tempest Federation territory. The audacity was breathtaking. Invading Apokolips was illegal, but establishing sovereign territory through right of conquest, that was how new gods operated. That was cosmic law Darkseid himself had written. Darkseid's mask shattered completely. You wouldn't dare. Claiming Apokolips territory would be direct challenge to Lord Darkseid's authority. He would have to respond with overwhelming force. You'd be declaring war. So, Diablo's smile was ancient and terrible. We're primordial demons invading a hell planet to rescue hostages from a tyrant god. War was always implicit. We're just making it official. The screens showing Tempest Federation's false suffering flickered and died. Darkseid had lost control of his psychological assault, too focused on the diplomatic catastrophe unfolding. Rimuru felt multiple futures crystallizing. Back down, extract the hostages through illegal rescue, face cosmic consequences, or escalate completely, claim territory, declare sovereignty, force Darkseid into acknowledging them as legitimate cosmic power rather than criminals to be hunted. The dark multiverse corruption whispered eagerly, yes, power, authority, force Darkseid to recognize you as equal, stop pretending protection requires permission, become what you truly are, a ruler who takes what he needs to protect his people. Raphael, Rimuru commanded, how much of Apokolips would we need to claim for legitimate sovereignty under cosmic law? Notice, Minimum territorial claim requires sustained occupation of significant infrastructure. Current laboratory qualifies if defended for minimum 72 hours against reclamation attempts. However, that means war with Darkseid, Rimuru finished. Yes, Darkseid recovered his composure, smile returning. And you've just walked into Lord Darkseid's true objective. He doesn't want to corrupt you through Apokolips's atmosphere. He wants you to choose corruption, to embrace conquest, to become the tyrant voluntarily because it's the only way to save these people. The trap within the trap within the trap. And Rimuru had 43 hours before dark multiverse corruption reached critical levels, before he stopped being able to distinguish between justified force and unjustified tyranny. "What do we do, Master Rimuru?" Benimaru asked quietly. Every eye turned to him. His circle, the hostages, even Darkseid waiting to see which path the demon lord would choose. Protection or principles, rescue or restraint, the tyrant's easy certainty or the hero's harder doubts. Rimuru looked at the 93 people suffering in containment, thought of his nation possibly struggling without him, felt the dark multiverse corruption feeding on Apokolips's darkness, and made his choice. "We claim this laboratory as Tempest Federation sovereign territory," he declared. "Extract the hostages, and when Darkseid comes, because he will come, we negotiate as equals, not as criminals begging for mercy." Darkseid's smile became genuine for the first time. "Lord Darkseid will be so pleased. You've chosen exactly as predicted." And deep in Apokolips's core, on a throne of cosmic tyranny, Darkseid's Omega-powered eyes gleamed with satisfaction. The Demon Lord was becoming what he needed to become. All according to the equation. Claiming sovereign territory on Apokolips turned out to be significantly easier than defending it. The hostages' extraction took 17 minutes, Rimuru's gluttony consuming the containment matrices, while Shuna's barriers protected the freed captives from Omega energy backlash. 93 disoriented, traumatized people who'd experienced Darkseid's hospitality, now huddled in the laboratory's least horrifying corner while Sao's shadows mapped defensive perimeters and Benimaru's flames sealed entry points. "This is insane," Dr. Emil Hamilton, one of Superman's science team, spoke through chattering teeth despite Apokolips's oppressive heat. "You can't hold territory against Darkseid. No one can." "We don't have to hold it permanently," Rimuru explained, while Raphael processed the spatial mathematics of their claimed zone. "Just long enough to establish legitimate sovereignty under cosmic law. 72 hours. "And then what?" Lois Lane's research partner, Dr. Sarah Chen, demanded with journalist instinct for inconvenient questions. "We're still trapped on Apokolips, still cosmic refugees. You've just escalated from illegal rescue to territorial invasion." She wasn't wrong, but Rimuru had learned from Batman that sometimes the only way through impossible situations was to make them even more impossible until variables aligned differently. "Raphael, how's our dimensional anchor holding?" "Notice, sovereign territory claim recognized by the cosmic framework. Defensive barriers are operational at 67% efficiency. However, Darkseid's reclamation force is assembling. Estimated arrival, 14 minutes. Composition, 50,000 parademons, female Furies battalion and Rimuru prompted. "Kalibak the Cruel, Darkseid's son. Power classification, new god alpha-level combatant." Wonderful. They'd claimed territory, and Darkseid was sending his most savage son to reclaim it. "Diablo," Rimuru addressed the primordial demon, "can you extend your aura as area denial? Keep the parademons from overwhelming through sheer numbers." "For a time," Diablo replied, golden eyes scanning the laboratory's impossible architecture. "But Apokolips resists primordial essence. The planet itself fights me. Every moment here costs more than it should." The same problem Rimuru faced. Apokolips wasn't just enemy territory, it was an actively hostile reality, like trying to swim through concrete that was also philosophically opposed to your existence. Warning: dark multiverse corruption at 34%. Apokolips resonance is accelerating degradation. Revised estimate until critical contamination: 2 hours, 43 minutes. Less than 3 hours before, he started becoming what the Batman who laughs had shown him, and they needed to hold this position for 72. The math didn't work. Master Rimuru, Shuna approached quietly while maintaining barriers around the hostages. I've been analyzing cosmic law frameworks. There's a provision: if a sovereign territory is attacked by the claimant's original owner within the establishment period, the attack itself validates the claim immediately. Darkseid sending his forces doesn't just reclaim, it acknowledges our sovereignty by treating us as a legitimate threat. Benimaru grinned savagely. So we want him to attack. We need him to attack, Shuna corrected. But we also need to survive long enough to make the acknowledgement matter. Sawe materialized from shadows, intelligence gathered from the laboratory systems. The maintenance tunnels connect to Apokolips's primary fire pit network. If we can redirect Omega energy flow, we could create a temporary power surge that would be sabotage. A new voice interrupted. Big Barda stood in the laboratory's primary entrance, Megarod deactivated, hands raised in apparent peace. Behind her, the rest of the female Furies had not attacked, they were waiting. I'm here under truce flag, Barda announced. Lord Darkseid wants to negotiate before Kalibak arrives and makes negotiation messier. Negotiate, Rimuru repeated flatly. He takes hostages, tortures them, forces us into illegal invasion, and now wants to negotiate. He wants to offer you a choice, Barda corrected, and her tone carried something unexpected: regret. The hostages can leave. We'll provide boom tubes directly to Earth. No cosmic law violations, no jurisdiction issues. They go home, you return to your operations in Gotham, and this entire incident becomes a misunderstanding. In exchange for, Rimuru knew there was always an exchange. You come to the throne room, alone, meet with Lord Darkseid personally, hear his proposition without your subordinates' interference. The circle reacted instantly. Benimaru's flames flared. Shin's hand moved to her blade. Sawe's shadows coiled defensively. Even Diablo's primordial calm cracked slightly. Absolutely not, Benimaru snarled. That's not negotiation, it's hostage exchange. Trade the 93 for Master Rimuru. Not trade, Barda insisted. Discussion. Lord Darkseid respects strength. You've demonstrated it by invading his world, claiming territory and forcing acknowledgement. Now he wants to understand what you truly want. I want these people safe and my circle returned home, Rimuru stated. Then negotiate for it. Barda's expression was unreadable. Lord Darkseid can provide what you want. The question is what you're willing to accept in return. The trap's architecture shifted again. Refuse negotiation, face Kalibak and 50,000 parademons while dark multiverse corruption ate away at sanity. Accept, and walk alone into Darkseid's throne room, where every psychological and existential weapon would focus on one target. What do you think? Rimuru asked his circle directly. It's obviously another trap, Sawe stated. But traps can be sprung from inside, Shin countered. And facing Darkseid alone means risking only yourself, not all of us. Terrible tactical logic, Benimaru growled. You're the irreplaceable element, we're the expendable assets. No one is expendable, Rimuru corrected firmly and meant it. That was the difference between his leadership and Darkseid's tyranny. But Barda's right about one thing: we can't hold this position indefinitely, not with corruption spreading, not against Apokolips's full might. Then we fight our way to the throne room together, Diablo suggested. Meet Darkseid with full force rather than accepting his terms. And lose the hostages in the crossfire, Shuna observed quietly. The moment we abandon this position, Darkseid reclaims the laboratory. We've established sovereignty but haven't secured extraction. They're still trapped here. Every option is contaminated. Every path is flawed. Rimuru felt the dark multiverse corruption whispering solutions. Consume them all. Absorb the hostages into your being temporarily, carry them out as part of your slime form. They'd be safe, under your absolute protection. No agency, no choice, but alive. That's what matters, isn't it? Their survival over their freedom. He crushed the thought with practiced violence. I'll go, Rimuru decided. Alone, but with conditions. Barda waited. The hostages boom tubed to Earth immediately, with full diplomatic immunity as refugees under Tempest Federation protection. My circle maintains this territorial claim until I return from negotiation, and if Darkseid tries to kill me, which he will, they extract with full force and no cosmic law restraint. You're giving us permission to start an intergalactic war if you die, Benimaru clarified. I'm establishing that my death has consequences Darkseid should consider carefully, Rimuru replied. Deterrence through mutually assured destruction. Batman calls it Cold War doctrine. Barda's expression softened microscopically. You've learned quickly how new gods think. Very well, I'll convey your terms. But know this, Lord Darkseid doesn't make deals, he makes offers. The difference is subtle but absolute. She activated her mother box, and boom tubes opened throughout the laboratory. Escape routes directly to Earth's major cities, carefully calculated to deposit hostages in Justice League jurisdiction where they'd receive immediate protection. The 93 people who'd suffered Darkseid's hospitality hesitated only briefly before fleeing. Dr. Hamilton paused at his boom tube entrance. Thank you, he said simply, and good luck, you're going to need it. Then they were gone, and the laboratory held only Rimuru's circle, the female Furies, and the suffocating pressure of Apokolips's malevolent awareness. Your escort awaits, Barda gestured toward a larger boom tube, not to Earth but deeper into Apokolips's infrastructure, toward the planetary core where Darkseid's throne room waited. Rimuru turned to his circle one final time. If I'm not back in 6 hours. We raised this entire planet searching for you, Benimaru finished. We know. Actually, Rimuru corrected, if I'm not back in 6 hours, assume I've been corrupted and activate the Tempest Protocol. Contact Batman. Let him execute the contingency. The circle went silent. They'd known the contingency existed, but hearing Rimuru explicitly authorize his own execution if necessary drove home the stakes. Master, Shuna's voice barely whispered, you can't mean. I've got less than 3 hours before corruption reaches critical levels, Rimuru stated flatly. If negotiations run long, if Darkseid delays, if he's counting on Apokolips breaking me, I need you to ensure I don't become what the dark multiverse showed, even if that means I don't come back. Diablo bowed slightly, primordial demon acknowledging demon lord's will. Your instruction is understood and will be honored, though I sincerely hope it proves unnecessary. So do I, Rimuru admitted. He stepped toward the boom tube, feeling Apokolips's darkness intensify with every meter closer to the planetary core. The Omega energy grew thicker, reality itself bending under Darkseid's tyrannical will. Notice, entering direct proximity to Darkseid, dark multiverse corruption resonates with new god Omega energy. Psychological defenses will degrade rapidly. Recommend. The recommendation vanished as the boom tube swallowed him. Darkseid's throne room was less a room and more a concept, the physical manifestation of absolute tyranny given architectural form. The throne itself rose from Apokolips's molten core, wreathed in Omega energy that made reality flinch. Fire pits surrounded it in geometric precision, each containing a civilization that had defied Darkseid and been consumed for fuel. And on the throne, casual as a king and absolute as entropy, Darkseid waited. He was smaller than expected. Not physically, new God stood easily 9 feet tall, armored in stone-like flesh that had endured eons. But the physical form seemed almost irrelevant compared to the presence. The weight of being that pressed down on Rimuru's consciousness like gravity concentrated into malice. Rimuru Tempest, Darkseid's voice resonated through dimensions. Demon Lord displaced across realities. Welcome to my throne room. Few enter uninvited, fewer leave unchanged. Rimuru forced himself to stand straight despite every instinct screaming to kneel, to submit, to acknowledge the overwhelming authority radiating from Darkseid like heat from a star. You invited me, through hostage-taking and psychological warfare, but still technically an invitation. Semantics, Darkseid smiled, and it was worse than any threat. I appreciate beings who understand the distinction between the letter and spirit of agreements. It suggests intelligence worth preserving. Preserving for what? For service, naturally. Darkseid gestured, and the throne room's architecture shifted, screens appearing that showed Earth, the Tempest Federation, countless realities across the multiverse. You seek to return home, protect your people, ensure their safety across dimensional barriers. These are admirable goals, futile but admirable. Why futile? Because protection is an illusion, Darkseid stated as fundamental law. There is only control, absolute control over every variable or inevitable failure, as variables you didn't control destroy what you cherish. You've glimpsed this truth. The dark multiverse showed you futures where half measures led to catastrophe, where restraint enabled suffering, where your principles became weapons your enemies used against you. The words struck like physical blows because they echoed every doubt, every fear, every moment Rimuru had questioned whether protecting people sometimes required becoming what he fought. You want me to join you, Rimuru stated. Become part of your hierarchy, embrace tyranny in service of, what? Your search for the anti-life equation. The anti-life equation is merely mathematics, Darkseid corrected. The proof that free will is illusory, that choice is chaos, that true peace requires eliminating the variables, eliminating choice itself. You don't need to believe in the equation. You only need to acknowledge that protection without control is fantasy. He gestured again, and the screens showed Tempest Federation in detail. Not Darkseid's fabrications, but genuine observation through dimensional viewers that bypassed cosmic law through sheer technological superiority. And what they showed made Rimuru's blood freeze. His nation wasn't collapsing, it was thriving. Veldora had been unsealed and was playing with Milim, their destructive energies carefully managed by Raphael's distributed network. Benimaru's brother Hakuryu had implemented new training protocols. The infrastructure Rimuru had built was operating efficiently, decisions being made through democratic councils, problems solved through cooperation and mutual aid. They didn't need him. You see it now, Darkseid observed with cruel satisfaction. You built a nation that functions without you. Your subordinates are capable. Your people are resilient. Your absence created a brief disruption but ultimately demonstrated that your leadership, while valued, is not essential. How does that feel, Demon Lord, to be replaceable? The psychological assault was surgical. Strike not at ego but at purpose. Show Rimuru that his protective instincts were obsolete, that his people had evolved beyond needing him, that his entire identity as protector was built on foundations that no longer existed. The dark multiverse corruption surged, feeding on existential crisis. See, you're not needed there, but here, on Apokolips, with Darkseid's resources, you could protect across multiverses, prevent suffering on cosmic scales. All it requires is accepting that control is the only true protection. You're wrong, Rimuru forced out through the psychological pressure. They don't need me to make decisions for them. That's not weakness, it's success. I didn't build dependence. I built capability. Semantics again, Darkseid waved dismissively. But semantics matter, so let me offer clarity. I don't want you as a servant, I want you as ally, partner in a grand design. The throne room shifted, and suddenly Rimuru saw it, the multiverse as Darkseid perceived it. Infinite realities, all suffering variations of the same chaos. War, famine, injustice, cruelty, all stemming from the fundamental problem of free will creating unpredictable variables. The anti-life equation doesn't destroy, Darkseid explained, voice carrying the weight of eons spent pursuing this goal. It clarifies, removes the chaotic element, allows beings to exist in perfect peace because they no longer struggle against their nature, their circumstances, their fundamental powerlessness. I offer universal salvation through universal order. You offer slavery, Rimuru countered. I offer freedom from choice's burden, Darkseid corrected. You feel it already. Every decision weighs you down. Every consequence is haunting you. Every path is contaminated by potential failure. Wouldn't it be simpler to embrace absolute certainty? To know that every action serves an ultimate purpose? To never again question whether you're protecting or controlling because they become synonymous? The corruption screamed agreement. The darkness inside Rimuru that had fed on Apokolips's malevolence reached toward Darkseid's offer like a drowning man toward flotsam. And Rimuru felt himself slipping. Not physically, philosophically. The lines blurring between protection and control, between justified force and tyranny, between the demon lord who rescued people and the tyrant who dominated them for their own good. I can return you home, Darkseid offered. Provide dimensional technology that makes Earth's boom tubes look primitive. Your circle will traverse realities freely. Your nation will expand across dimensions. All I ask is acknowledgement. When the time comes, when I've gathered the anti-life equation's final components, you won't oppose me. You'll understand that universal order serves the protection you value. And if I refuse, then you remain trapped in this dimension, corruption spreading, until you become what I'm offering anyway. Or you return home through slow research, taking years while your people continue proving they don't need you. Either path leads to the same conclusion, acceptance that power must be absolute to be meaningful. The trap's final architecture revealed itself. Stay and corrupt into Darkseid's ally. Leave and spend years displaced while discovering irrelevance. Accept the offer and gain everything immediately while compromising everything eventually. Rimuru felt Raphael struggling to maintain analytical coherence against Apokolips's pressure and Darkseid's overwhelming presence. Warning: dark multiverse corruption at 51%. Critical threshold approaching. Recommend immediate extraction before psychological defenses fail. Less than an hour left before he stopped being Rimuru Tempest and became something else. And Darkseid knew it, was counting on it, had engineered every moment to bring them to this exact point. You need time to consider, Darkseid observed. I'm generous with allies. Take 6 hours. Consult your subordinates. Analyze variables. Reach the inevitable conclusion that cooperation serves your goals better than opposition. When you return to accept, I'll provide dimensional coordinates immediately. 6 hours. Exactly the timeframe Rimuru had told his circle to wait before activating the Tempest protocol if he didn't return. Darkseid had heard every word and had known the contingency. Was offering exactly enough time for Rimuru to either accept voluntarily or corrupt past the point where resistance mattered. I have a counteroffer, Rimuru said, and saw genuine surprise flicker across Darkseid's stone features. You negotiate with gods. I negotiate with tyrants pretending to be gods, Rimuru corrected. Here's my offer. You provide dimensional coordinates to the Tempest Federation immediately. I leave Apokolips, extract my circle, and promise only this. When you attempt to gather the anti-life equation's final components, I won't help you. But I also won't oppose you unless your actions directly threaten my people or this dimension where I'm currently operating. Neutrality, Darkseid assessed. You offer to stand aside while I reshape reality. I offer not become your enemy preemptively. There's a difference. Silence filled the throne room, the kind of silence that preceded either violence or revelation. Then Darkseid laughed, actually laughed, the sound echoing through dimensions like thunder through canyons. You've surprised me, Demon Lord. Most either submit or defy. You offer practical coexistence based on an honest assessment of conflicting interests. How? Refreshingly pragmatic. Do we have a deal? No, Darkseid replied, and Omega energy began gathering around his form. Because I've realized something about you. You're not just resisting corruption. You're studying it, learning from Apokolips, integrating fourth world physics, not to use against me but to understand how tyranny operates. You're not here to rescue hostages. You're here to inoculate yourself against becoming me. The realization was terrifying because it was partially true. Rimuru had been absorbing Omega energy, analyzing new god psychology, understanding tyranny's architecture, not to embrace it but to recognize it in himself if it ever began manifesting. Clever, Darkseid acknowledged, but ultimately futile, because understanding tyranny from inside its heart means you're already contaminated beyond recovery. The question is no longer whether you fall, only whether you fall toward me or away from me. The Omega energy coalesced into beams, not aimed at Rimuru, but at the dimensional barriers separating Apokolips from Earth, from Tempest Federation, from every reality Rimuru cared about. I'll give you the coordinates. Darkseid stated, after you prove yourself worthy, defeat Kalibak in single combat, survive Darkseid's final experiment, and face me personally in battle. Demonstrate that demon lords can stand against new gods without breaking. Then, and only then, will I provide what you seek. And if I refuse the trials, then the Omega beams erase the dimensional pathways. Earth becomes permanently isolated from multiversal transit. Your circle remains trapped here forever, and your precious Tempest Federation becomes unreachable across infinite realities. Choose quickly, Demon Lord. My patience has limits. Rimuru felt the trap close completely. Fight Darkseid's trials and risk corruption through combat. Refuse and doom his circle to eternal displacement. There was no good option, only different flavors of catastrophe. And somewhere in Gotham, Batman monitored the situation through systems even Darkseid hadn't detected. The Tempest Protocol ready to execute the moment Rimuru crossed the point of no return. The clock was ticking, and Apokolips was winning. The choice Darkseid offered was elegant in its cruelty. Prove yourself through trials that would corrupt you, or abandon everyone to dimensional exile. Rimuru had approximately 47 minutes before dark multiverse corruption reached critical mass. Kalibak, Darkseid's final experiment, and combat with Darkseid himself would take hours minimum. The mathematics of survival simply didn't work. Unless he changed the equation. I accept your trials, Rimuru stated clearly, on one condition. Darkseid's Omega energy paused mid-coalescence. You negotiate terms for trials designed to break you. Bold. Practical, Rimuru corrected. You want to see if demon lords can stand against new gods. Fine, but if I succeed, when I succeed, you provide dimensional coordinates and guarantee safe passage for my circle back to Earth. No pursuit, no retaliation, complete withdrawal from Earth operations for 1 full year. And when you fail, then you get exactly what you wanted anyway, a corrupted demon lord willing to serve. No loss for you either way. Darkseid considered, stone features unreadable. Finally, he smiled. You assume I want you corrupted. What if I simply want you dead? What if these trials exist to eliminate a variable that threatens my equations? Then you wouldn't have spent months setting up elaborate psychological traps, Rimuru replied. Raphael, analyzing Darkseid's microexpressions despite Omega energy interference. You don't invest this much effort in something you plan to discard. You want to understand demon lords because we're something new in your calculations, an unknown factor in your multiversal conquest plans. The analysis hit home. Darkseid's smile widened fractionally. Correct, your kind are anomalies, beings who achieved godlike power through consumption and evolution rather than cosmic inheritance. The source wall doesn't classify you properly. The emotional spectrum can't categorize you. Even the speed force registers demon lords as paradoxes. Your variables I must either integrate or eliminate, and integration offers more strategic value. So we have a deal. We have terms, Darkseid corrected. The difference matters. You'll face Kalibak in the arena, survive Darkseid's ultimate experiment, then, if consciousness remains, face me. Success grants your conditions. Failure grants me a useful weapon. Begin when ready. He gestured, and reality tore open, a boom tube to Apokolips's combat arena where Kalibak waited. Through the portal, Rimuru glimpsed a coliseum that made Roman architecture look quaint, surrounded by fire pits and filled with baying parademons eager for blood sport. One more thing, Rimuru said before stepping through. My circle maintains the territorial claim on Darkseid's laboratory. If I detect any attempts to reclaim it during trials, the deal is void and they raise your planet searching for me. They're welcome to try, Darkseid replied, unconcerned. Apokolips has endured worse than 5 displaced demons. Have you endured a primordial demon who predates your source wall? Rimuru asked mildly. Diablo is older than your new gods, Darkseid. Push him, and you'll discover exactly what existed before cosmic law tried imposing order on chaos. For the first time, genuine interest flickered in Darkseid's Omega-powered gaze. Primordial entities usually remain abstract. Your demon has taken form, purpose, and loyalty to something beyond himself. That alone makes him worth preserving. Very well. The laboratory claim stands during your trials. Rimuru stepped through the boom tube, feeling Apokolips's full malevolence crash over him like a tidal wave. The arena's roar was deafening, millions of parademons screaming for violence, Darkseid observing from a luxury box with scientific detachment, and in the center of it all, Kalibak the Cruel. Darkseid's son stood 12 feet tall, muscles like living stone, wielding a beta club that crackled with Omega energy. His face was bestial rage given form, not mindless but worse, intelligently savage. He'd been fighting since before Earth civilizations existed, hunting violence into an art form. Demon Lord, Kalibak's voice was gravel dragged over broken glass. Father says you're worth testing. I say you're meat waiting to learn its place. Let's discover which is true. He didn't wait for a response, just charged with speed that defied his massive bulk, Beta Club swinging toward Rimuru's skull with force that could crater mountains. Rimuru dissolved into slime form, the club passing through liquid physiology harmlessly. But Kalibak had fought shapeshifters before. His follow-up strike caught Rimuru mid-reformation, Omega energy from the Beta Club disrupting his molecular cohesion. Warning: Omega energy direct contact. Cellular structure is degrading. Dark multiverse corruption is accelerating in response to new god physics. Rimuru reformed 20 meters away, body smoking. Kalibak had landed one hit, and already Rimuru felt the contamination spreading. Omega energy and dark multiverse corruption feeding off each other like gasoline meeting fire. First blood to me, Kalibak observed. How many more before you break? Rimuru activated gluttony, but not to consume Kalibak. That would take hours of sustained contact. Instead, he consumed the arena itself. The stone floor, the Omega energy barriers containing the combat zone, and even the ambient tyrannical pressure Apokolips radiated. Raphael processed it all, analyzing new god construction, fourth world physics, and the mathematical principles underlying Darkseid's reality manipulation. Not to use immediately, but to understand. To build immunity through exposure. It was agony. Every second of absorption felt like swallowing broken glass mixed with existential dread. But slowly, painfully, Rimuru's resistance to Omega energy increased. Interesting technique, Kalibak charged again, faster this time. But you're not fighting the arena, you're fighting me. The Beta Club descended in a pattern Batman's combat analysis would have appreciated, perfectly calculated to drive Rimuru toward the arena's walls, where Paradum claws waited to shred anything that got close. Rimuru didn't dodge. He met the charge head-on with steel thread, molecular-thin wires that could cut through dimensional barriers, now reinforced with absorbed Omega energy. The threads wrapped around Kalibak's weapon mid-swing, redirecting momentum, turning the new god's strength against him. Kalibak crashed into the arena wall he'd been trying to force Rimuru toward. Paradum scattered, screeching. When the dust cleared, Kalibak stood with a new expression, respect mixed with rage. You fight like a warrior, not like a coward hiding behind tricks. Good, Father was right. You're worth killing properly. He dropped the Beta Club, apparently it was beneath him now, and came at Rimuru with bare hands wreathed in Omega energy. Close combat. New god strength and millennia of experience versus Demon Lord adaptation and desperate innovation. They collided like gods, which technically they were. Each impact shook the arena. Kalibak's fists struck with force that could shatter Kryptonian bones. Rimuru's counterattacks absorbed Omega energy, turning Darkseid's own power against his son. But the corruption was spreading. Rimuru could feel it, dark multiverse infection feeding on the Omega energy in his system, growing stronger with every exchange. His thoughts began fracturing, showing him alternate choices. Consume Kalibak completely. Absorb his essence, his power, his connection to Darkseid. Become strong enough that no new god threatens you again. Kill him. Demon lords don't show mercy to enemies. Eliminate the threat permanently. Dominate him. Force submission. Make Darkseid watch his son kneel before superior power. Each thought felt reasonable. Each whispered that restraint was weakness. Each pushed him toward the tyranny he feared. Notice dark multiverse corruption at 68%. Critical threshold in 23 minutes. Psychological defenses are failing. Recommend. Rimuru couldn't hear Raphael's recommendation over the roaring in his mind. The arena, the combat, Kalibak's savage joy, it all blurred into pure violence. He was losing himself. Then Kalibak made a mistake. In his enthusiasm for honest battle, he dropped guard fractionally. Rimuru's fist, now crackling with stolen Omega energy, struck true, sending the new god crashing through 3 arena walls. The Paradumans went silent. Even Darkseid looked surprised. Kalibak rose slowly, bleeding from a dozen wounds that should have been impossible to inflict on new god physiology. His expression transformed from rage to something worse, genuine pleasure. Finally, he breathed, someone who hits back properly. Father will be so pleased I found a worthy opponent before killing you. He gathered Omega energy from the arena itself, pulling power from fire pits and Paradum technology, growing larger, stronger, pushing past his normal limits into something approaching Darkseid's own might. And Rimuru realized the trap within the trap. Kalibak wasn't supposed to win through skill. He was supposed to force Rimuru into escalating responses until the corruption won. Every technique Rimuru used, every power he absorbed, every moment he fought at full capacity fed the darkness inside. The trial wasn't about defeating Kalibak. It was about defeating himself. Warning, critical threshold in 17 minutes. Dark multiverse corruption is reaching irreversible levels. If contamination exceeds 75%, mental restoration is impossible without external intervention. 17 minutes. and he still had Darkseid's experiment and Darkseid himself to face. The mathematics was impossible. So Rimuru stopped fighting them. "Kalibak," he called out, deliberately relaxing his combat stance despite every instinct screaming to maintain guard. "I yield this trial." The arena went silent. Parademon stopped screaming. Darkseid actually stood up in his observation box. Even Kalibak froze mid-charge. "You yield." Darkseid's son processed the concept like a foreign language. "We fight to unconsciousness or death. There is no yield in Apokolips." "Then I'm introducing new precedent," Rimuru stated clearly, feeling the dark multiverse corruption actually recede slightly, deprived of the combat-fueled escalation it needed to grow. "I came to prove demon lords can stand against new gods. I've done that. You're bleeding. I landed hits you felt. The question is answered. Continuing until one of us can't stand anymore serves only spectacle, not purpose." "Purpose?" Kalibak looked genuinely confused. "The purpose is victory, domination, proving superiority." "No," Rimuru corrected, and felt conviction strengthen despite corruption's whispers. "The purpose is survival, understanding, finding paths that don't require absolute victory over every obstacle. That's the difference between protection and tyranny, knowing when not to fight." He could feel Darkseid's attention focusing like an orbital weapon. The Lord of Apokolips watching this exchange, with interest that transcended simple trial observation. "If I destroy you now," Kalibak pointed out reasonably, "Father will be disappointed, but I'll still have one." "True," Rimuru acknowledged. "But will you have learned anything? Or just confirmed what you already knew, that superior force defeats inferior resistance? I'm offering you something rarer, combat where both warriors survive and gain knowledge." Kalibak's bestial features twisted, processing concepts alien to Apokolips's philosophy. Finally, impossibly, he lowered his omega-charged fists. "Father," he called to wherever Darkseid observed from, "the demon lord fights like no one I've encountered. He yields without submission, stops without defeat. This is confusing." Darkseid's voice echoed through the arena, amused and analytical. "He's demonstrated that demon lords possess strategic flexibility new gods often lack. Kalibak, you've done well. Stand down." The trial ended not with glorious victory or crushing defeat, but with mutual understanding. Exactly, the outcome Apokolips's philosophy said was impossible. Notice, dark multiverse corruption stabilized at 67%. By refusing escalation, psychological defenses recovered marginally. Time until critical threshold, 31 minutes. Buying minutes by breaking patterns, it was something barely. A boom tube opened, not back to Darkseid's throne room, but to Darkseid's primary laboratory. The torturer waited with an expression of disturbing anticipation. "Trial 2, Darkseid announced. "Combat tests physical capacity. Now we test psychological resilience. Are you prepared, Demon Lord?" Rimuru stepped through, knowing he had 31 minutes before corruption won completely, still had to face whatever horror Darkseid had engineered, and then somehow survive combat with Darkseid himself. The mathematics remained impossible. But he'd just proven that refusing to follow Apokolips's mathematical assumptions created new equations. Sometimes survival meant not fighting to win, but fighting to remain yourself. Even if that meant losing by traditional standards. Darkseid's laboratory had transformed. The containment pods were gone, hostages already extracted. Instead, the space held a single device at its center, a chair surrounded by crystalline structures that pulsed with energy Rimuru recognized from the dark multiverse. "My masterpiece," Darkseid gestured proudly. "Lord Darkseid acquired dark multiverse matter specifically for this experiment. The chair will expose you to concentrated nightmare reality while I observe how Demon Lord psychology responds to existential horror." "You're going to show me bad futures until I break," Rimuru summarized. crudely stated but accurate, though these won't be hypotheticals. These will be real alternate timelines where your choices led to catastrophe. You'll experience them as if you lived them. Feel every betrayal, every failure, every moment where your protection became tyranny. Darkseid's smile was clinical cruelty. Most subjects fracture within minutes. I estimate you'll last perhaps 10 before psychological cohesion fails. Rimuru had 29 minutes before corruption reached critical mass anyway. 10 minutes of Darkseid's torture would push him past the threshold into irreversible contamination. But refusing meant voiding the deal, trapping his circle, abandoning the dimensional coordinates home. One question, Rimuru said, buying seconds to think. Why does Darkseid care about Demon Lord psychology? What's the strategic value? Darkseid actually answered, scientists loved explaining their work. Because you're the first beings who have achieved new god-level power through consumption rather than cosmic inheritance. If Lord Darkseid can understand how demon lords think, he can predict them, control them, or eliminate them efficiently. Your psychology is data. Your suffering is merely a collection methodology. Reducing torture in research protocol, Apokolips at its finest. Rimuru sat in the chair, feeling dark multiverse crystals activate around him. Darkseid's instruments began recording, and reality dissolved into a nightmare. Timeline 1. He'd killed Clayman but hadn't stopped. Consumed every demon lord who posed a potential threat. Became the monster they feared, ruling through absolute power. Veldora was sealed forever to prevent a challenge to authority. Tempest Federation thriving but terrified. Prosperity built on subjects too afraid to question. Timeline 2. He'd refused to kill when necessary. Falmouth's army destroyed the Tempest Federation. Everyone he loved died while he clung to principles that valued enemy lives over his people's survival. The guilt drove him mad, consuming everything, trying to bring them back. Timeline 3. He'd accepted Darkseid's offer in this very moment. Returned to the Tempest Federation with dimensional technology, began protecting his world by expanding control. Within years, he ruled multiple dimensions through benevolent tyranny, subjects grateful for the peace they hadn't chosen. Each timeline felt real, complete, lived experiences compressed into eternal moments. Rimuru experienced every choice's ultimate consequence, felt every path's corruption or catastrophe. And the dark multiverse contamination fed on it, growing stronger with each nightmare absorbed. Notice corruption at 71%, 73%, 76%, critical threshold exceeded, mental restoration impossible without. Then, impossibly, the progression stopped. Not because Rimuru resisted, but because he accepted. Yes, he said aloud, speaking through the timelines to Darkseid and Darkseid both. I could become any of these. Tyrant, failure, well-intentioned monster. Every timeline is possible. Every choice carries corruption risk. Accepting inevitability already, Darkseid sounded disappointed. I expected more resistance. Not acceptance of inevitability, Rimuru corrected, feeling something shift inside the corruption itself. Acceptance of possibility. The difference is critical. He focused inward, speaking directly to the dark multiverse contamination spreading through his essence. You've shown me every way I could fail, every path toward becoming what I fear. And you're right, all of it is possible. I carry that potential inside me. The capacity for tyranny exists. Then submit, the darkness whispered. Embrace inevitability. Become the tyrant efficiently rather than reluctantly. No, Rimuru replied, because possibility isn't destiny. I've seen the futures where I fall. Now I know exactly what to avoid, what choices lead where. You've given me a map of my own potential corruption, and maps only help if you choose different paths. He pulled awareness back to Darkseid's laboratory, to the chair and crystals and the torturer's fascinated expression. Your experiment failed, Rimuru stated. Not because I resisted the timelines, because I integrated them. The dark multiverse contamination isn't an external infection anymore. It's knowledge, warning system, constant reminder of what I could become if I stopped questioning my choices. Darkseid's instruments showed readings that made him actually step back. Impossible. No one integrates dark multiverse matter voluntarily. It consumes, it corrupts, it doesn't teach. It does if you're already carrying it inside you, Rimuru replied, feeling the contamination stabilize at 76%. High, dangerous, but no longer growing. I've been fighting the corruption since Bel Rivet, trying to eliminate it, contain it, resist it. But that was the wrong approach. It's part of me now. The question is whether I let it control me or whether I use it as a reminder of what I'm fighting against. He stood from the chair, dark multiverse crystals shattering as their purpose became inverted. Instead of a weapon to break him, they'd become fuel for understanding himself. Trial 2 complete, Rimuru announced. I've survived your psychological torture not through resistance but through acceptance of my own darkness. What's Trial 3? Darkseid looked to wherever Darkseid observed from. Instruments still recording data that contradicted Apokolips's entire philosophical framework. And in his throne room, Darkseid smiled with genuine satisfaction. The Demon Lord had done exactly what was needed. Integrated corruption rather than being consumed by it, turned weapon into tool, transformed inevitable fall into controlled descent. It was magnificent, useful, everything Darkseid required in potential allies. Now came the final trial. Could Rimuru stand against Darkseid himself without breaking? The answer would determine whether demon lords were variables to integrate or threats to eliminate. The boom tube that opened didn't lead back to Darkseid's throne room. It led outside. Apokolips's surface was worse than any hell humanity had imagined. The sky burned perpetual red-black, fire pits stretched to horizons, and the air itself tasted of despair, refined into an atmospheric component. Parademons filled the skies in formations that numbered millions, their screeching creating a symphony of mindless loyalty. And standing in the center of a massive platform suspended above the planetary core, Darkseid waited. Not sitting on his throne, standing as a warrior, Omega energy crackles around his form like living malevolence. Behind him, Apokolips itself seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat, the entire planet an extension of his tyrannical will. Rimuru Tempest, Darkseid's voice carried across impossible distances without technological aid. You've exceeded expectations. Kalibak reports you fight with honor. He's rarely encountered. Darkseid's data suggests you've achieved something theoretically impossible, voluntary integration with dark multiverse contamination. You've proven demon lords are more than mere variables. Rimuru stepped onto the platform, feeling its surface hum with Omega energy, knowing that every advantage belonged to Darkseid here. Home territory, full power. Apokolips itself is ready to respond to its master's will. Notice, dark multiverse corruption stable at 76%. Integration successful but permanent. You will carry this darkness for the remainder of your existence. Psychological vigilance is required indefinitely. Current operational capacity, 91% despite contamination. 91%. Better than expected, given he was standing on a planet designed to break hope while facing a god who'd conquered thousands of worlds. You've completed the trials, Darkseid continued. Demonstrated combat capability and psychological resilience. By rights, I should provide dimensional coordinates as agreed, but I find myself curious. One final test, not a trial with predetermined parameters. Simply, conversation through combat. Show me how demon lords fight when everything is at stake. You want to see my full capacity, Rimuru translated. I want to understand what created you, Darkseid corrected. New gods are born from the source wall and cosmic inheritance. Demons traditionally spawn from sin and suffering. But demon lords, You transcend classification. Consume and integrate until you become something neither divine nor infernal but fundamentally other. I must know if that otherness threatens the equation. The anti-life equation. Darkseid's eternal obsession. Mathematical proof that free will was an illusion and absolute control was the only truth. He saw Rimuru as a potential threat to that calculation. Good. If I win, Rimuru asked. You won't. But if you somehow survive longer than Orion did during our last serious confrontation, approximately 47 seconds before I broke his spine, I'll consider dimensional coordinates earned through sheer stubborn persistence. And if you win, then I'll have data on Demon Lord limitations. Either outcome serves my purposes. Begin when ready. No countdown, no ceremony. Just Darkseid's acknowledgement that combat between gods required no artificial structure. Rimuru activated every skill simultaneously. Gluttony is consuming the platform beneath them, analyzing Omega energy in real time. Steel threads spreading across the combat zone in a molecular-thin web of spatial cutting. Raphael is calculating Darkseid's movement patterns, predicting attacks through analysis of new god physiology and observed combat footage. Beelzebub, Lord of Gluttony's ultimate evolution, expanding his existence across dimensions, making him harder to pin down spatially. And Darkseid's response was elegant in its brutality. Omega beams. The red energy lanced from his eyes with precision that defied physics, curving through space-time to track targets across dimensions. Rimuru's spatial manipulation meant nothing. Omega beams existed partially outside reality, following mathematical certainty rather than physical law. The first beam struck Rimuru's shoulder, an entire arm dissolved. Not destroyed, erased retroactively, removed from the timeline so it had never existed. Pain came second, after the philosophical horror of watching part of yourself deleted from causality. Rimuru reformed the limb through ultra-speed regeneration, but Darkseid was already moving. For a being his size, the new god moved with speed that made Flash look leisurely. His fist, wreathed in Omega energy, crashed into Rimuru's hastily raised defense with force that shattered dimensional barriers. They traded blows at velocities that broke sound and approached light. Each impact shook Apokolips. Parademons scattered from the shockwaves. Fire pits flared brighter, feeding on the released energy. And with each exchange, Rimuru felt Darkseid's overwhelming superiority. This wasn't like fighting Kalibak, savage but manageable. This was like fighting fundamental law, gravity given malice, entropy weaponized. Warning: current combat capacity insufficient for victory. Darkseid is operating at an estimated 40% power and is still dominant. Recommend tactical withdrawal. No retreat available. The platform was isolated by Omega energy barriers. Boom tubes wouldn't function within Darkseid's direct presence. This fight ended when Darkseid decided it ended. So Rimuru changed approach, stopped trying to win and started trying to learn. Every Omega beam he dodged, Raphael analyzed. Every physical strike he absorbed, Gluttony processed. Every moment of combat became data collection, understanding not just how Darkseid fought but why. The philosophical framework underlying new god combat philosophy. And slowly, impossibly, patterns emerged. Darkseid fought with absolute confidence in mathematical certainty. Every attack is calculated for maximum efficiency. No wasted movement, no emotional investment, pure strategic optimization. It was beautiful, horrifying. Everything Rimuru feared becoming. Power wielded with such absolute conviction that concepts like mercy or restraint became illogical variables to eliminate. "You're learning," Darkseid observed, Omega beams carving reality around Rimuru's increasingly desperate evasions. "Good. Adaptation is survival's foundation. But understanding my combat philosophy won't help you defeat it. I've fought beings who studied me for eons. They all fell to the same truth: sufficient power, properly applied, overcomes any resistance. He was right. Rimuru could analyze forever and still lack the raw capacity to match Darkseid blow for blow. So he stopped trying to match, started trying to subvert. "Raphael," he commanded while dodging another Omega beam by microseconds, "analyze the anti-life equation fragments Darkseid's already gathered. He's incorporated them into his combat style. Look for the mathematical signatures." Notice detecting. Yes, partial equation integration in attack patterns. Darkseid uses fragments to enhance predictive modeling. He's not just fighting you, he's calculating your responses before you make them. Fighting precognition through mathematics, wonderful. But precognition had a weakness. It assumed rational actors making optimal choices. What if Rimuru made deliberately suboptimal decisions, chose tactics that made no strategic sense, acted against his own interests, and embraced the chaotic variable Darkseid's equations couldn't account for? He charged directly at Darkseid. No feints, no techniques, just straightforward assault that any tactical analysis would mark as suicide. Darkseid's Omega beams tracked accordingly, aimed to intercept the predictable path. Then Rimuru simply stopped. Mid-charge, reversed momentum with spatial manipulation that violated conservation laws, appeared behind Darkseid through dimension hopping that shouldn't have been possible within Omega energy barriers. For one eternal second, Darkseid was out of position. His equations had predicted rational assault, prepared an optimal counter, and found chaos instead. Rimuru's fist, charged with every skill, every absorbed Omega energy particle, every technique he'd integrated since arriving in DC Universe, struck Darkseid's spine at the exact point where new god physiology concentrated neural processing. The impact cratered the platform. Shockwaves rippled across Apokolips. Parademons fell from the sky in formations, stunned by the impossible, their lord struck from behind by prey. Darkseid stumbled, actually stumbled half a step, before stabilizing and turning with an expression that mixed pain and approval. 49 seconds, he announced. "You've lasted 2 seconds longer than Orion. Impressive." Blood trickled from his mouth. Apparently even new gods bled when struck hard enough. "You fight like chaos incarnate. No pattern, no optimization, pure adaptive randomness. It's inelegant but effective." "I fight like someone who refuses to be predicted," Rimuru corrected, knowing the strike had been lucky, that Darkseid had allowed surprise by assuming equations always worked. "Your anti-life equation assumes beings act optimally. What if we don't? What if choice, even irrational choice, matters more than optimal outcomes? Then you embrace chaos over order, suffering over efficiency, free will's illusion over peace's certainty." "Maybe," Rimuru acknowledged, "or maybe your equation is missing variables that can't be quantified. Hope, loyalty, the willingness to make suboptimal choices for people we love." Darkseid's Omega beams fired again, but this time, Rimuru was ready. He consumed them mid-flight, gluttony integrating Omega energy directly, processing the mathematical certainty underlying their existence, understanding the anti-life equation fragments encoded in their structure. It was agony. His consciousness fractured across probability curves that proved free will, was an illusion, mathematical proofs that choice was predetermined, equations that reduced existence to calculable variables. And within that agony, Rimuru found the flaw. The anti-life equation was incomplete. Darkseid had gathered fragments, yes, but critical components remained missing. The proof that free will was an illusion had gaps, spaces where irrational choices, chaotic variables, and unpredictable elements existed outside mathematical certainty. "You can't complete it," Rimuru realized aloud. "The anti-life equation. You've been searching for eons because the final components don't exist. Not because they're hidden, but because they're contradictory. The equation that proves choice is illusion would have to eliminate itself, including the choice to embrace it. Silent, Apokolips itself seemed to hold its breath. Then Darkseid smiled, genuine, appreciative, terrifying. You see it. Few do. Yes, the equation contains a paradox at its core. The ultimate proof of determinism must account for beings who choose to reject that proof. It's why I search endlessly, not to complete it but to find the variable that resolves the contradiction. And you thought demon lords might be that variable. I thought beings who transcend classification through consumption might embody the chaos order synthesis required. But you've proven otherwise. You carry contradictions without resolution. Demon and lord, protector and potential tyrant, free will advocate with deterministic corruption. You are the paradox, not the solution. Darkseid's Omega energy gathered to levels that made the previous combat look like a warm-up. The entire planet's power focused through its lord, reality itself bending under the weight of concentrated tyranny. This has been educational, Darkseid stated. You've earned your coordinates through surviving longer than expected and revealing insights into the equation's fundamental nature. But now I must determine if you're a useful ally or a threat to eliminate. Show me your absolute capacity, Demon Lord. Hold nothing back. The corruption inside Rimuru screamed. This was it. The moment to embrace full power, consume Darkseid if possible, prove demon lords could stand against gods through sheer overwhelming force. But Rimuru remembered Darkseid's timelines. Every path where absolute power led to tyranny. Every choice where doing whatever was necessary became doing whatever was desired. And he made the hardest choice possible. No, Rimuru stated clearly. Darkseid paused, Omega energy still gathering, but the attack held. No. I won't show you absolute capacity. Won't prove that demon lords can match new gods through raw force. Because that's not what matters. That's not what separates protection from domination. You refuse to fight at full power while facing an opponent who could erase you from existence. Darkseid sounded genuinely baffled. I refuse to become what I fight while proving I can fight it. There's a difference. The Omega energy dissipated. Darkseid lowered his hands, expression unreadable. You came to Apokolips to rescue hostages, claimed sovereign territory, faced my trials, and now, when offered a chance to prove ultimate strength, you choose restraint. He processed this like a foreign concept. You either possess wisdom I've rarely encountered or stupidity beyond calculation. Maybe both, Rimuru admitted. But I've seen what happens when I stop choosing restraint. The dark multiverse showed me. Your trials confirmed it. Every path where I embrace absolute power leads to becoming you, effective, powerful, and completely isolated from everything that made power worth having. Isolation is strength, Darkseid countered. Connection is vulnerability. Connection is why I came here at all. My circle, my nation, the hostages I'd never met, all connections that made risking corruption worthwhile. Your anti-life equation can't account for that because it sees connection as weakness to eliminate rather than strength to preserve. Silence stretched across Apokolips. Parademons had stopped screeching. Fire pits burned more quietly. Even the planet's malevolent presence seemed to pause, waiting for its lord's response. Finally, Darkseid spoke. You've survived combat longer than Orion, integrated dark multiverse matter voluntarily, identified the anti-life equation's fundamental paradox, and now you lecture me on connection's value while standing on my world surrounded by my power. He paused. You're either the bravest being I've encountered or the most foolish. Either way, you've earned respect I give rarely. A boom tube opened, not to his throne room but directly to the laboratory where Rimuru's circle maintained their territorial claim. Through it, Rimuru saw Benimaru, Shin, Diablo, Shuna, and Saoi still holding position despite the hours that had passed. Your coordinates, Darkseid gestured, and a crystalline device materialized, new god technology encoded with dimensional pathways. Tempest Federation's exact location across realities, complete with boom tube access protocols and dimensional stabilization equations. As agreed. Rimuru took the device carefully, Raphael immediately analyzing its authenticity. And your pursuit of Earth. 1 year cessation of operations, as negotiated. I keep my agreements, Demon Lord. Unlike lesser beings, I understand that trust between powers requires honoring terms even when inconvenient. Why? Rimuru had to ask. You could kill me now, claim the coordinates were damaged in combat. Why honor the agreement? Darkseid's smile was an answer and a threat simultaneously. Because you've demonstrated that demon lords are variables worth cultivating, not eliminating. You'll return to your nation, grow stronger, face challenges that test your philosophy against practical reality. And eventually, when you've had years to consider whether connection truly outweighs isolation, whether free will serves better than order. You think I'll change my mind? I think reality will change it for you. Every crisis where restraint enables suffering, every moment where connection becomes a liability, every choice is between protecting your people and maintaining your principles. The universe will test you far more ruthlessly than I could. And when it breaks you, when you finally accept that control is the only true protection, you'll come back, not as a prisoner or subordinate, as an ally who chose enlightenment through experience. The trap's final architecture revealed itself. Darkseid wasn't trying to corrupt Rimuru through force. He was letting reality do it, releasing him to face challenges that would prove tyranny's necessity through lived consequence. It was patient, long-term, horrifyingly possible. And if I don't come back, Rimuru asked, if reality tests me and I maintain my principles anyway, then I'll have been wrong about Demon Lord psychology, which would be educational in itself. Either way, I win. You return as an ally, or I learn that connection-based philosophy can survive cosmic-scale challenges, disproving assumptions underlying the anti-life equation. Both outcomes serve my ultimate goal. Checkmate from a position most would consider defeat. Darkseid had been outfought but won strategically, by making Rimuru's very existence into an ongoing experiment. One question, Rimuru said as he moved toward the boom tube. The dark multiverse corruption, can it be removed? No, Darkseid replied flatly. You've integrated it too thoroughly. It's permanent now, part of your consciousness like memories or instinct. You'll carry that darkness forever, always one choice away from becoming what it showed you. Consider it. Reminder. Every moment you maintain principles despite corruption's whispers proves your philosophy. Every moment you slip toward tyranny proves mine. So I'm a walking weapon in your long-game strategy. Your free variable I'm allowing to resolve naturally. There's a difference. Rimuru stepped through the boom tube. The crystalline device clutched tightly, feeling Apokolips's malevolence finally recede as he returned to the claimed laboratory. His circle surrounded him immediately. Benimaru's flames warming without burning, Shin's warrior presence solid and reassuring, Diablo's primordial aura protective, Shuna's gentle assessment checking for contamination, Saoi's shadows confirming safe extraction. Master Rimuru, Shuna spoke first, the corruption. Permanent, Rimuru confirmed. But manageable. I'll carry dark multiverse infection forever. But I've also gained understanding of my own limits, knowledge of paths to avoid and coordinates home. He held up the crystalline device. Tempest Federation, we can return. The circle's relief was palpable, but Benimaru's expression remained troubled. What did it cost? What did Darkseid extract in exchange? Nothing immediate, Rimuru replied honestly. But he's betting that reality will do his work for him. That eventually, challenges will force me to choose absolute control over principled restraint. He's turned my entire existence into a test of whether connection outweighs isolation. Then we'll prove him wrong, Shin stated with warrior certainty. Together. Together, Rimuru agreed. A boom tube opened, this one from outside. Batman stepped through, followed by Superman and Wonder Woman. The Trinity had been monitoring, waiting to intervene if necessary. "You survived," Batman's voice carried relief beneath tactical assessment. "The Tempest protocol was active, if you'd crossed the threshold." "I know," Rimuru interrupted. "Thank you for being willing to stop me if necessary." Superman's X-ray vision scanned Rimuru and his expression tightened. "The corruption is still there, permanent from what I'm seeing. You're carrying a piece of the dark multiverse inside you." "Think of it as a reminder," Rimuru replied. "Constant awareness of what I could become. Batman lives with contingencies to kill his friends. I'll live with the darkness that wants me to become a tyrant. We all carry our weights." Wonder Woman assessed with a warrior's eye. "You faced Darkseid personally and survived. Few can claim that. Fewer still do it through restraint rather than escalation. You've honored the warrior's code. Knowing when not to strike is greater strength than knowing when to attack." "The hostages?" Rimuru asked. "Safe on Earth," Batman confirmed. "Granted political asylum as Tempest Federation citizens under your authority. It's legally complicated, but it works. They're free." "And Darkseid's pursuit?" "Suspended for 1 year as agreed," Superman said. "We've received confirmation through New Genesis diplomatic channels. He's honoring the treaty." "Because Darkseid kept his word when it served his purposes. Honor among tyrants." "What now?" Benimaru asked the question that they all felt. Rimuru looked at the crystalline device, at his circle, at the Justice League representatives who'd bent every rule to help without officially sanctioning invasion. "Now we go home," he decided. "Return to the Tempest Federation, resume leadership, and prove every day that connection matters more than control, that protecting people doesn't require dominating them, and that carrying darkness doesn't mean surrendering to it." "Darkseid's waiting for you to fail," Batman observed. "Let him wait," Rimuru replied. "I've got eternity to prove him wrong, and unlike him, I won't be doing it alone." The boom tube home opened. Dimensional coordinates locked, pathway stabilized, Tempest Federation waiting across realities. Rimuru could feel it, Veldora's presence, Milim's energy, his nation thriving without him but ready to welcome him back. Not as a lord who demanded obedience, but as a leader who'd chosen to return rather than rule from afar. "Before you go," Superman offered a small device, a Kryptonian crystal. "Communication link. If you need help, if the corruption starts winning, if Darkseid returns, call. The Justice League will answer." "Even though I invaded sovereign territory and started a potential intergalactic incident." "Because you did it for the right reasons and chose restraint when power was easier," Wonder Woman corrected. "That's what heroes do. The rest is just politics." Batman remained silent but nodded slightly, his version of endorsement. Rimuru took the crystal. "Thank you for everything. The intelligence, the diplomatic cover, the willingness to execute contingencies if necessary. I couldn't have survived without allies." "That's the lesson Darkseid will never learn," Superman observed. "Isolation isn't strength, connection is." As Rimuru and his circle stepped through the boom tube toward home, as Apokolips receded behind them and Tempest Federation approached ahead, Rimuru felt the dark multiverse corruption stir one final time. It showed him futures, timelines where he failed, where corruption won, where protecting his people required becoming what he fought. Every possible path toward tyranny, mapped and waiting. And for the first time, instead of crushing those visions, Rimuru acknowledged them, accepted they were possible, choose differently anyway. Because that was the real battle, not fighting external enemies but internal darkness, not proving he couldn't fall but choosing not to, every moment forever. Darkseid had given him the coordinates of home, but he'd also given him a far more dangerous gift, awareness of exactly how he could fail, detailed maps of corruption, and a lifetime burden of choosing restraint despite easier paths. It was the perfect trap, make Rimuru's entire existence a test of his own philosophy. But it was also perfect motivation. Prove every day that free will, even imperfect and struggling, mattered more than deterministic tyranny. In Apokolips's throne room, Darkseid observed the Demon Lord's departure with satisfaction. The experiment was underway, variables introduced, outcome uncertain. And in uncertainty lay the ultimate test of the anti-life equation. If Rimuru Tempest could survive cosmic challenges while maintaining principles, it proved the equation incomplete. Free will existed outside mathematical certainty. If Rimuru fell to tyranny despite best intentions, it proved the equation correct. Control was inevitable for any being with sufficient power and responsibility. Either way, Darkseid would learn, would refine his understanding, would move closer to the ultimate truth. Patience was infinite for gods. And the Demon Lord had just begun his longest trial. Rimuru Tempest returned to the Tempest Federation changed. Not corrupted, not yet, but marked. The dark multiverse infection was permanent, carried in his consciousness like scar tissue. Every day brought whispers of easier paths, control instead of cooperation, domination instead of protection. And every day he chose differently. His circle noticed. Benimaru watched for signs of the tyranny they'd witnessed in timelines. Shin maintained warrior vigilance against her lord's potential fall. Diablo observed with primordial patience, ready to intervene if necessary. Shuna's diplomatic skills became internal as well as external, mediating between Rimuru's ideals and corruption's temptations. Sawai's intelligence network now monitored its own master for signs of compromise. They'd all changed. Apokolips had taught them that protection required eternal vigilance, not just against external threats but internal darkness. The Justice League maintained contact. Superman checking in monthly, Batman updating the Tempest protocol as Rimuru's capabilities evolved, Wonder Woman offering warrior wisdom about carrying darkness without surrendering to it. Constantine showed up occasionally with alcohol and cynical observations about Hell Dimension's permanent effects. And through it all, Tempest Federation thrived. Not because its leader wielded absolute power, but because he'd built systems that worked without requiring his constant control. Democratic councils made decisions. Citizens chose their paths. The nation functioned as a community rather than a hierarchy. It was messy, inefficient, chaotic compared to Darkseid's perfect order. It was also free. Across dimensions in the DC universe, the Justice League maintained watch. Batman's contingencies remained active. If Rimuru fell, if corruption won, the response would be immediate and absolute. But alongside those contingencies sat communication crystals, offers of alliance, recognition that the Demon Lord who'd invaded Apokolips and chosen restraint deserved trust as well as vigilance. And on Apokolips, Darkseid waited, patient, certain, knowing that reality would test the Demon Lord far more ruthlessly than any trial, that eventually a crisis would force a choice between principles and people. When that moment came, when Rimuru Tempest faced the impossible choice between maintaining freedom or embracing control, Darkseid would know whether the anti-life equation's paradox could be resolved. Until then, the universe continued its dance between hope and darkness, freedom and tyranny, the eternal struggle between those who believed connection mattered and those who saw it as weakness to eliminate. Rimuru Tempest had survived Apokolips, had integrated dark multiverse corruption, had faced Darkseid and walked away. But the real trial had just begun, living every day with darkness inside, choosing light anyway, proving that even gods could maintain principles when power made tyranny easier. It was the hardest battle any being with godlike power could fight. And Rimuru Tempest, Demon Lord of Tempest Federation, was determined to win it. one choice at a time. Forever, hope shines brightest in the darkest night. More stories await.